Hello my friends and welcome. Lots of stuff happened for the last day, including hitting Russian refineries, which are really far away from Ukraine, to again penetration of the Russian drones into the NATO airspace. And there are other multiple news, so bear with me, we're gonna speak about everything. But let's start from this one. This is Ufa city, which is 1,400 kilometers away from Ukrainian border. It is roughly 900 miles. As you see, the local refinery facility was damaged by something, and that something is the long-range Ukrainian drone. Let's watch this video. You may see it is the ultralight airplane Foxbat Airpract 22. And this one is zoomed in, the quality is not that great. Sadly, I cannot show you the kaboom itself on YouTube, maybe just as an image here. Yeah, that was the strike. So every freaking day there are losses for the Russian oil refinery capabilities. Ukraine nails it very hard. Moreover, it intensifies the strikes on the most sensitive facilities because Ufa in particular was crucial. Yeah, I just found this image in internet, but it is like that. So most people live in Moscow and around Moscow plus St. Petersburg and around. Yeah, this map is a little upside down, so there is north, there is south, there is west, and here is east. Like this, for you to understand. There is already dramatic shortage in fuel for Russia, but Russia still tries to keep their most populated regions at least with fuel available. Yes, for the much higher price, but you may refuel your car. Here on the far east and behind Ural Mountains or in Caucasus part, occupied regions of Ukraine as well, you can barely find some fuel. Yeah, diesel is still available, but classical benzene just occasionally. And this Ufa refinery was located, somewhere there in Tatarstan Republic. I hope one day it gains its independence. So that refinery was used for this region to supply fuel in the central part and far east. Now it is unserviceable. And yes, again it tells us that Russia is not as big as it appears on the map from the population perspective, which is mostly concentrated in the European part of Russia. European and a little bit Asian part behind Urals, but here rarely someone lives, almost no one, yeah? The same picture is actually applied for China as well, because the vast part of the country is just deserted. I think that's why maybe in some future perspective China would need some of the Russian lands. And Russia actually cannot respond in the same way, like there are some of the refineries still in Ukraine, but they're very, very small, and kaputting them would not mean anything for Ukrainian capabilities to defend itself, because Ukraine obtains all of the fuel from its European partners. It is already like that for many years. Russia finished the biggest Ukrainian refinery at the beginning of 2022, so Ukraine handles it with the help of our partners. So our partners in Europe, thank you so much for supporting Ukraine with your fuel. Yes, Ukraine buys that fuel, but still with this logistics, Ukraine may sustain even civilian life plus military actions. Well, Russia also has backup from Belarus and maybe they'll cooperate with Kazakhstan, but Russia itself is way bigger compared to Ukraine, so I think they need their own refineries to sustain their economy. So what Ukraine does right now is absolutely great. But what is this, my friends? This is one of the Polish cities not far away from Ukrainian border. Air sirens are in operation. Why? Well, because some of the Russian drones again violated the airspace of NATO. Sirens were sounded in Helm city and Lublin airfield again was closed for commercial operation. Also, Polish Air Force again launched the operation to shut down Russian drones, but for now, for this hour, I don't have 100% proofs that Russian drones really intercepted the airspace here, but actually we have those proofs just from another NATO state member, Romania. Romanian officials confirmed that some of the unidentified air object was spotted flying in their airspace that went there from Ukraine. Yeah, because this evening again Russia launched the attack on Ukraine. There were many of the Shahid drones and Giran drones and many others were spotted in Ukraine. So one of the drones went 10 kilometers at least to Romanian territory and was flying there for almost 1 hour. President Zelensky also confirmed the case. What happened to the drone after all, officials do not specify, but it wasn't shut down by Romanian Air Force. They were just accompanied the drone in their own airspace, not even willing to shut it down. Well, like, what is happening, guys? If they don't have the balls even to do it to unmanned, like, you will not cause any life losses if you shut it down. Especially in that area, it was not populated, so they just accompanied the drone. The worst case scenario that for the drone to enter Ukraine once again, which I think could happen in this case. I'm still waiting for the information about particular flight paths of the drone, because this information is actually available for Ukrainian Air Force Command. Ukraine is just in lack of the tools to shut down all of the drones over its territory, not to let those to fly to neighboring countries. Oh yeah, you see here how our allies helped to Ukraine, so they followed this Shahid drone which entered their airspace, I mean Romanian airspace. F-16s chased the Russian drones over Tulsia country, which borders Odessa Oblast. Fighters escorted the drone until it returned to Odessa Oblast. There were no attempts to destroy it, so thank you Romania for not destroying drone, accompanied the drone for it to go back and to hit some civilians, probably in Ukrainian territory or some part of Ukrainian infrastructure. Thank you so much, freaking much. Well, for now, the only response I see that NATO began some sort of the exercise of how they gonna move the forces to protect Lithuania. So at least something. It's not a robust response, but military exercises are also good in the current state we have with all of those NATO officials and those politicians of Europe who still do not realize what is up to happen. It could be very, very harmful to Europe. There should be a prompt response, deploying Air Force to shut down those drones in Ukraine, like in Ukrainian airspace. At least like that, because we see how Russia escalates. Even Germany deployed some of the extra forces and armored vehicles plus military personnel for handling everything. Roughly 2,000 of the German troops will be deployed in Lithuania for some time. The images of those tow trucks with APCs were posted online. And let's watch this video. That is how Russia escalates. So several of the missiles were put just at the public highway road in Kaliningrad Oblast. This is the Iskander missile. Alleged range of it is 550 kilometers. At least, it is what Russia says for you to believe, but in fact, it could fly for larger distance. It's already proven by Ukraine. But even if we take the standard distance, you may see that it almost fully covers Poland, fully covers Lithuania, Latvia, partially Estonia, partially Sweden, and if needed, part of Germany. Also the Baltic Sea with several of the islands there. So the video with the Russian Iskander ballistic missiles was published not just like that, it's not the casual video, no, it was filmed for purpose, to appear in the press and social media showing that Russia is getting ready for escalation. And believe me, there is nothing really out there which might shut down potentially those ballistic missiles. Yeah, Patriot systems with only PAC-3 type of the missiles, but how effectively they could be used at the proper time and whether those NATO countries really await for this kind of the attack, or as they call provocation from Russia. Yeah, now they're waiting because they're military exercise, but after exercise we'll see what it comes next. Because Russia started its attack on Ukraine from Belarus after the military exercise. Not during them, no, but after. They left their equipment, they left their soldiers, and only after that attacked Ukraine. So we'll see if Russia stays in Belarus after the military drills. But Iskander missiles, they're really dangerous because they may carry nuclear warheads. And even Belarus now has those, so it's definitely an escalation. Oh my god, Russia has all the cards actually to continue their attacks and provocations against the NATO members, because even inside those NATO European countries there is huge political confrontation and division. Donald Tusk, who I believe is pro-Ukrainian, accused some of the parties in Poland, Peace and Confederacy Party, that they think that it was a provocation from Ukraine that Russian drones attacked Poland. It happened on 10th of September, so 3 days ago. And yeah, definitely I read some of the comments on Twitter saying that Ukraine launched their drones to Poland or somehow deflected the trajectory of the Russian drone. So Ukraine is guilty. Well, with this attitude and this division, even inside those countries, you'll understand that Russia definitely may escalate. Because if you split from inside, if you split between each other, I mean European Union countries and NATO in general, yeah, how can you potentially defend yourself? It's not possible. I see autocracies unite, not democracies, unfortunately, for now. And yes, I want to say about the United States of America, the biggest military of NATO and in the world, with national division out there because of MAGA in power. It's the greatest, I think, from every sort of the NATO country. And it's very, very bad. And today this vehicle was spotted. This is BTR-22. At first I thought that it's some sort of the new BMP, but no, it's a new BTR that was released for service to the Russian army in 2023. It has the fighting module and kind of the good capacity. I would compare this vehicle to the Western-made already. You see that the doors at the back, so it's the proper construction of BTR, not like BTR-80 that Russia has. No, this really should be, from what I see, a capable machine. And by the way, there are new tactical signs, 3 of the stripes like Adidas. And what is interesting that it was spotted in Grodno, Belarus, the city which is bordering Poland. Whether it's the part of the Russian military drills in the area, I don't know, we'll see. But it is already an evidence of the lies coming from Belarus, because before those military drills, Belarus generals stated that military exercise will not be conducted close to the Polish border or other borders, like with Ukraine as well. But the vehicle with new markings was spotted out there very, very close to Poland. Alright, what we have here is the operation of Magyar birds. They shot down this Russian Orion drone. Orion is the analog of the Turkish-made Bayraktar TB2. Well, at least characteristics, as Russia claims, are mostly the same. Well, Russia started to produce lots of the drones, however, sometimes Ukraine may hunt those down, like it happened over here. This is the drone, you might see it is quite big and it may also carry some of the munition missiles. But in many of the cases, it has been used as the surveillance drone. So Ukraine now has the capabilities to shut down Russian drones using drones, not the air defense systems, no. And our Polish colleagues, they were interested to gain this experience, and the Ukrainian side asked them to go to Ukraine and practice, theory, practice to shut down Russian Shahids, but Polish side for now says no, you Ukrainians, you go to Poland to teach us. Well, at first our drone operators, they're kind of busy to shut down drones over Ukrainian skies, and how can you gain the practice not shutting down Russian drones? Because Russian drones, for now, they're not flying over Poland every day. So why they are refusing to go to Ukraine for the training which is needed for their own protection, for me it's mystery. Well, maybe I know the answer. They are afraid to escalate, sending their soldiers even for this mission to Ukraine. Yeah, sorry guys if I criticize or tell some not optimistic things, but I tell what I think personally based on previous war experiences and the current war which is ongoing in Ukraine, and knowing the rhetorics of the Russian side that they are willing to escalate. Honestly guys, for now I see just weak reaction, sadly. That's why it's important to highlight and speak about it. Alright, now let's go to the front lines for a while, because we have some of the update coming from Kupiansk city. There Russia gained some more territories. For example, they went to Kindrashivka. It was yesterday, it is today. This was possible because they used the tube operation that at this time, I may admit, was successful for the Russian side. So they landed their forces without being hit by drones in Radkivka, and now they expand. Their expansion actually is vivid now even in Kupiansk city itself. I think I need to switch for the satellite image. Yeah, several blocks of the city are under the Russian control. You may see the gray area expansion as well. They're moving to the main part of Kupiansk. Ukrainian defenders tried to secure perimeter, but definitely it was the mistake of Ukrainian command once again in this defense, because Russians several times before conducted those tube operations, so Ukrainian military command should have already knew about the case. And there are definitely some of the tubes near Kupiansk. I guess now I understand why Russia wants to supply their gas elsewhere, to China, to Europe, because that is the way out how they may send even their forces. Plus, the deep state military map source tells about the movement of the Russian forces near Stepovo-Novoselivka, so it was yesterday, it is today. They expanded just the gray area, but nevertheless there was the movement. As for the Pokrovsk operation, I don't have the latest update of this military map, but it seems like situation is getting better for Ukrainian defenders, and Russia still hesitates to start its massive attack which they planned for this autumn. Well, here different sources say different things. I'll wait just a little to show you the real picture. Some say that Russians were already encircled in Fedorivka as well, but I don't have really proofs of that. And Russia also moves in Velika Novosilka direction. For the last couple of days they advanced, taking the ground, even entering some of the villages and again establishing the control over part of Novoselivka, where before they were kicked out by Ukrainian armed forces. I would say that this direction is the weakest for Ukrainian defense. And this part, which Putin wants to gain just like that, for Ukraine to give up those territories as exchange for so-called ceasefire, well, the defense here is the strongest for Ukraine. That's why it's absolutely not the way out for Ukraine to just give those territories to Russia, because Russia will not stop there. So the front lines are moving, but it's not too much compared to what it was several weeks ago. And we are still braced for the major strike of Russia. I guess it will happen in Pokrovsk or Konstantinovka. Well, we're gonna see, because Russia concentrated lots of the forces there. To some of the political stories, many media sources published the stuff that Donald Trump is looking to apply sanctions on Russia after all. Well, and Donald Trump himself posted something really big here relative to the war in Ukraine, Russia, NATO, or whatever. A letter sent by President Donald Trump, so letter or it's the social media post, and why he continued to speak from the third-person perspective. So anyways, I'm ready to do major sanctions on Russia, wow! But here is the small condition, then all of the NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing. And then all NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia. So this condition is already pretty much unrealistic, at least in the close-by perspective, while Donald Trump is a president of the United States of America. Because Europe will continue to purchase Russian fossil fuels till 2027, they say, but I think a little bit further till 2028, the time for next elections, right? And who is buying Russian oil the most? Obviously, Trump's friend Orban. And just to recall, in his personal letter to Orban, Donald Trump condemned Ukrainian strikes on Russian pipeline, Druzhba pipeline, which is used to supply oil not just for Hungary but also to Belarus. So because of this condition, he will never apply sanctions on Russia. It is understandable already. So I'm ready to go, then you are. United States is independent from purchasing of the Russian oil, so Donald Trump here uses the excuse, so dependence of Europe on fossil fuels, because Europe itself has not enough oil to supply its economy. That's why it purchases oil also from United States of America, and gas as well, and also from Russia. Europe was dependent on Russian gas and oil for a very, very long time. It was the policy which made Europe more dependent on Russia, and now it takes time to get rid of this needle of the Russian oil. And also it made Russian regime powerful after all. So from one side, Donald Trump says that it's bad that you continue to purchase that stuff from Russia. Now, I agree here, it's bad, but he puts it as the condition to apply sanctions on Russia, which makes it impossible. And also he has one more condition, plus NATO as group placing 50%, 100% tariffs on China to be fully withdrawn after the war with Russia and Ukraine is ended. It's kind of the interesting name of this war. Some people say war in Ukraine, war of Russia against Ukraine, but war with Russia and Ukraine? War with Russia and Ukraine sounds interesting. So yeah, apply tariffs or sanctions on China. By the time I hesitate to increase my tariffs because my economy suffers. Yeah, Donald Trump. Just recall how he lost this tariff war to China. Then China increased the same amount or even higher than Donald Trump, and some clerks in the White House told Trump that we cannot continue like that, like our economy is so dependent on China's production that we have to backtrack, and he did. did it. I think that the current tariffs are roughly 30% by the time they were 100 with something during this kind of the short tariff war, yeah? And again, he says the same bullshit. This is not Trump's war. It would have never happened. Oh, fuck. I'm so tired of, in general, I'm so tired of Donald Trump, his messages. I just read it because he's the president of the United States. An idiot president, a really incompetent buffoon, and he continued to say that it's Biden's and Zelensky's war. So Zelensky started the war, it seems like, together with Biden. Yeah, no Putin is mentioned here, just Biden and Zelensky, Trump, MAGA, and all of those people who support this idiot. So this social media post says that I will not apply sanctions on Russia despite Russian escalation, and I continue to blame the previous administration because I simply did not like them and I don't like Zelensky, so I blame Ukraine. But Putin is my fellow, Putin is my friend. So what should be my attitude to MAGA and Donny? Well, I already told you, right? Yeah, the war will continue, absolutely, and it not only continue, but as I said to you, it will expand or escalate. Yeah, the escalation is kind of the popular word nowadays. And my separate thanks to Patreon supporters, guys. Thank you so much for maintaining my motivation to film those videos for you. You hired me for this mission, for this job, and I want to serve to you, to everyone who watched my videos. And I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.